its own hands, literally. And Nassau County celebrates the power of making music. But first, if you're looking for a good book or 20, we've got your recommendations. Here to discuss some of their favorite titles are four experts in the field. Rona Brinlee, owner of the BookMark in Neptune Beach. Good morning, Rona.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Angie Nixon, state representative and owner of the Cafe Resistance Bookstore on Soutel Drive. Good morning, Angie.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me.
Donna Kaufman, owner of Story and Song Center for Arts and Culture in Fernandina Beach. Welcome back, Donna.
Good morning, Ann.
And joining us via video is Tricia Booker, UNF journalism instructor and author of The Place of Peace and Crickets. Good morning, Tricia.
Good morning, everyone, especially to my dear friend Rona.
Good morning, Tricia. Sorry you're not here.
You guys actually offered a duplicate title we'll get to in a minute that was a shared favorite. But to our listeners, we also want to hear from you. Let us know what you're reading this summer. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or shoot us an email at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Donna, I want to start with you. You have a number of great recommendations, some fiction, some nonfiction, but topping your list this year is The Glassmaker by Tracy Chevalier. Can you talk about this? This is based in history.
It is, and it spans 6 centuries. And I'm in love, as many of our customers are, with historical fiction. And not only is this a great book in terms of the storyline, and it's about the glass-making tradition in Murano, which is a little island off of Venice. So if you've traveled there, or if you've always wanted to, for the price of a paperback this summer, you can travel to a little village where there were dynasties, glass-blowing dynasties.
Wow.
And this particular story of Tracy Chevalier, who we love for her beautiful book, Girl with the Pearl Earring. So she's back this time, and this is a story of one of the father of one of the dynasties dies. And of all of the people in the family, it's the eldest daughter who actually has a knack for the glass blowing, and she has a business sense too. So we get to follow her life through the Renaissance period through the family to contemporary times. So it's a fascinating story. It's beautiful. There's love. There's glass. There's family dynamic, and of course, the history of what happens in the role of women through time.
So you say that she's the Girl with the Pearl Earring, which was a big bestseller and a critically acclaimed book a number of years ago. Another book that's on your list is by an author whose name will be familiar to a lot of people because of a book that she wrote called American Dirt. And it was a very controversial novel, also very popular. Can you tell us what the new book is and remind us what that what that controversy was surrounding the author's last book?
It really did kick up a big storm in the book industry and beyond. The new book by Jeanine Cummins is Speak to Me of Home. And it is set both in Puerto Rico and in the United States, St. Louis specifically. So there's a love story of 3 decades ago or 3 generations ago. And it's a mixed marriage. And it is not accepted by the family in St. Louis. So the couple has some children in Puerto Rico, and then they uproot everybody and relocate them to the Midwest. And it is the story of this woman, Rafaela, who is never accepted there. She's isolated because everywhere she goes, the cold shoulder is turned to her. Mm. So she's raising her kids. She's trying to be a good wife. She's trying to fit in. And so we have her daughter, Ruth, who sees all of this and wants none of Puerto Rican culture. So she goes in the opposite direction, which is pretty similar of other immigrant stories. The next generation just wants to be totally American. Well, when Daisy comes along, who is Ruth's daughter, she wants to go back and learn about the family in Puerto Rico. So it's another immigrant story. American Dirt, if you recall, was about a border crossing, and a dangerous border crossing for a woman and her son who were fleeing persecution. Her husband, a journalist, had been murdered, as had most of her family during a family gathering. And so she's on the run, and she's fighting for her life.
And that story, I mean, it's interesting that this new book, Speak to Me of Home, deals with a family from Puerto Rico, because Jeanine Cummins does have some family from Puerto Rico. But the controversy surrounding American Dirt was that she was basically writing about a culture that she didn't have any direct connection to. And many people found some of the ways that she was describing the characters in the book as in perhaps not in the terms that people would prefer, or some way she was sort of accused of culturally appropriating, sort of this flight to freedom.
Right. And so in the book industry, I think a lot of us who are either in publishing or in book selling spoke up and said, it's fiction. This is made up stuff, and she was no different than other novelists who put themselves, like, remember, Memoirs of a Geisha, written by it was a huge issue. This is a man writing about Japanese culture from a female perspective. So here we go to Jeanine Cummins, and she's writing this story. She's awakening us to the trials and the real issues of border crossing. And because of the culture, she wasn't of that culture, she got criticized. And the wonderful outcome, I think, of this controversy was that was a tipping point in the book industry. I think the point was made, look at who's in the boardrooms, look at who's acquiring new product for the various imprints, and realize that it's very slanted toward the white male perspective.
Yeah.
And so from then on, we saw many more imprints being developed for people of color. We saw people of color actually joining the boardrooms. So I think it was a wake-up call that the book industry actually, I think, rose to the occasion.
Yeah.
Made some progress at least.
Angie, I want to bring you in because, your store is, there's some general interest, but it's also mission-driven in terms of the titles that you choose. One book that you're recommending is called Rising Troublemaker, a fear fighter manual for teens. And this is actually a sequel to a book by the author that was a fear fighter manual essentially for adults. It was called Professional Troublemaker. Why is this book for teens? Why does it appeal to you? Why do you think it's something people should pick up?
Yeah, so based on what's happening right now in our country, and a lot of folks want to figure out how to get involved, don't know how to get involved. Things are bubbling up inside of them, and they want to be active. And this book is the book for them, especially for young teens, especially because a lot of the things that they're going through, their world is changing. It looks quite different from when we were growing up. And so they want to know how to get involved and how to have their voices heard. And this book is somewhat of a primer and an introduction into that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you chose this because you certainly have a reputation, in the House, in the work that you do as a lawmaker, of being an outspoken advocate and somebody that doesn't back down. This book really is about trying to kind of ditch fear, eliminate it, or move beyond sort of that reticence some people have to participate or to speak out.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually sitting on a panel discussion the other day with 904 and in front of some teenagers, and they were trying to figure out how to get involved. Some of them said, what if we are a little afraid or fearful to say certain things, because no one wants to be the only person that speaks up. And so this book basically walks children and teenagers through the process of how to become advocates for their community and for whatever issue that they want to see addressed.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to local bookstore owners and author, all book fans, about their summertime reading recommendations. And you can join our conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. We've got a call from Charles on the West Side. Good morning, Charles. Go ahead.
Good morning. Oh, this is so great. What was the title of the Murano novel again? And then I had another question for you.
The Murano novel.
The Glassmaker.
One with the Murano.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
involved.
the author is Tracy Chevalier, and it's called The Glassmaker.
The Glassmaker, great. It sounds kind of similar to that historical fiction novel called The Cathedral, about the stonemasons family that starts out in England and winds up working on the great cathedrals of Europe, and eventually Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a science fiction recommendation for the summer?
I am going to turn to Rona Brinlee of the BookMark for that answer. I have a number of questions about your recommended titles, but you have one that rises to the surface for sci-fi fans.
It's not really sci-fi. It's more a little witchy. Does that help?
This is the antidote.
Yeah, I would say the antidote is not, it's not science fiction, but you certainly have to suspend reality more than just regular fiction. It's set in the 1930s Nebraska Dust Bowl, and the antidote is a prairie witch. And what she does is she takes people's memories that they don't want to think about anymore, and for a fee, she will store them in her own mind. And then for a fee, if they, always a fee, obviously, if for a fee, you can retrieve them if you want them later. Unfortunately, during a major storm, she basically, what she calls, goes bankrupt, and all those memories are erased. And so when people come back to get their memories, she has to make something up so that they don't know that but they don't know that she's made something up because obviously they don't remember their memories. And so it's an amazing story about what we keep in our head and what we don't. And with that magic part of it, it makes it even more fascinating. She takes on an assistant who knows people's lives, so the stories are not totally out of whack, and they might have an effect on how people make decisions in the future. So I would recommend that one highly. It's beautifully written. It's by Karen Russell, who wrote Swamplandia years ago, and she's just an amazing writer. You could underline something on every page.
Tricia, I want to bring you into the conversation because that also was one of your recommendations. And as Rona says, I mean, I know that you loved Swamplandia. This is a really evocative story, though, that really, I think, helps people have a better understanding of just the nightmare of the Dust Bowl era and kind of how oppressive life was in Nebraska, and not just Nebraska, but, you know, the other places that were part of that enormity of ecological destruction. What is it that most appealed to you about this story?
Well, I've been waiting and waiting for her to come out with something that would follow up Swamplandia. That is just firmly ensconced in my brain as one of my favorite books. But one of the things that really immersed me into the story is how the effects of climate change, literally a change in climate, can uproot everyone's lives. I mean, everyone is affected by these unexpected turns that Mother Nature takes. So I think there are definitely some real life parallels between what happened, 100 years ago and what's happening today. But the way the other thing that is really stunning to me is how she tells the story in different voices, and each voice is so entirely different and so compelling. That really makes you you're drawn to the characters, and when one character's chapter ends, you can't wait to get back to it to see where they're going with it.
Another book that is on your list, Tricia, is called The Wedding People. And that sounds like a really kind of a perfect beach read. I think the New York Times selected it as one of their recommendations as well, if you're looking for something kind of juicy by the pool. Tell us a little bit about that.
I really loved this book, and it's not the type of book I would normally pick up, but my 23-year-old daughter asked me to read it so we could talk about it. It's coming out in paperback this summer, actually. So it's about this young woman, and she's happily married, and one day her husband leaves her, and kind of in a trance, she just goes to a hotel one day where she had always wanted to go with her husband, for her former husband, and it's a grand hotel in Newport, Rhode Island, and there's a wedding happening there. And she accidentally kind of gets absorbed into the wedding. So everybody thinks she's part of the wedding party. And some of the main characters in the wedding party kind of assume that she's with them and begin to confide in her. So I've never had so many parts in a book where I'm laughing and crying at the same time, because it's definitely makes you think a lot about friendship, but also about grief and about the definition of happiness and where you want to go with your future, how you make decisions on where you're going to go with your life. But it's just a very funny book, the way she just throws caution to the wind, and everyone makes assumptions about her and she doesn't correct them. She's like, yeah, okay, I'm part of the wedding party. Let's see where this takes me.
That's fun.
It's a really fun book.
Rona, one book that you have on your list that is also, I think, kind of an emotional book is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. This is one that was blurbed by Ann Patchett, so, pretty much gets the green light in my book. But tell us a little bit about it. This is a debut novel, is that right?
Yeah, and I always say, who doesn't want to read other people's mail? So this is what they call an epistolary novel. It's a book told only in letters. And so these are letters that this woman writes. She has trouble relating to people in person, obviously, and so she does better writing letters. She writes letters to friends, and she writes letters to authors. She'll write a letter to Larry McMurtry and talk about his latest book, and I can relate to that. I like writing letters to author, and they like getting them, I should tell people. And she writes letters to her local university because they won't let her audit a course. And so all these letters are in there, and then there's some letters that we don't know who they're really to, and they don't get sent. But the amazing thing is that you can tell a person's whole life story in the letters that they write. It's kind of going to be a lost art. I'm not sure that you can do that with an email or a text. We tend to get a little short with an email or a text. But this is a woman that you can tell her entire life story from the letters she writes, and you get very emotionally drawn into her decisions and her isolation, and yet her connections that she follows through on.
And she's older when she's, the story is around a woman who's about in her 70s.
Watch it. Women in their 70s, watch it.
I'm there, come on. But what I thought was really interesting is that the author of this book, who probably is in her mid 40s or something, she's written other novels, but this is her first published novel, and she has. So, she's got this successful, it's being very widely acclaimed, but it really is kind of a first, offering.
Yeah, and it's a gutsy first offering to do something in letters, which is so unusual. There have been some in the past, but this is somewhat unusual. And when you say she's in her 40s, I'm thinking back to what Donna said and American Dirt, that was an important book because it raised important issues, but this is the same question. She's 40. Doesn't mean she can't talk about women in their 70s. People don't have to commit murders to write a mystery. I mean, it gets a little silly, these notions. Yeah, it helps. I mean, then you'll know all the details and hopefully know how not to get caught. But the notion that, you can't write about something, women have been writing in men's voices for all eternity, and for men to write in women's voices shouldn't be such a shocking moment.
Yeah. Angie, I want to ask you about a children's book that is on your list called Allie Baby Can. Well, it's part of a series called Allie Baby Can. And there's a book that she did, Allie Baby can be an eco-activist, can be a feminist, but this one is Allie Baby can be anti-racist. Tell us a little bit about this title, why you like it.
I mean, again, as I stated earlier, there's a lot going on right now. We're dealing with some critical divides here in our country, in our state, in our city. And now I feel strongly that the time to talk about racism is when our children are very small, so that we can avoid racism. We can avoid the disconnect and really try to address it head on, as I have a baby in my lap right now.
Yep.
But, and it talks to them in, it's actually for toddlers, and it talks to them about race and what it means, and so that we can basically tear down those walls and they don't have to be fearful about someone that doesn't look like them.
Yeah. And, not all of the books that you chose are, focused on necessarily messaging. There's Sisters in Arms that you chose by Kaya Alderson. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Miss Alderson, she is actually, she's local somewhat. She's based in Georgia. I want to say, I can't remember, but it's Southern Georgia. And it is based on the women of the 688. And they are Black women who served in World War I. They had a battalion, and actually Tyler Perry recently made it into a movie on Netflix with Kerry Washington. And so this book came out a few years ago, and it just talks about the racial tension and the misogyny that existed in the military back during World War I. It is fiction, but it does draw some stark parallels to what was happening back then. But it is based on what happened in the past, and so it's a very interesting story. It follows two women who come from the northern part of the United States who then join the army and have to deal with segregation like they've never dealt with before.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about best books for summer reads. If you would like to join our conversation, you can email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air. Got a message from Michael who emailed Martha Jones, The Trouble of Color, an American Family Memoir. And he includes a little description from Kirkus Review that says, eloquent, candid, and meticulously researched, this book will appeal to both lovers of family memoir and scholars of Black history. A deftly woven, multi-generational tapestry that celebrates the complexity of African-American history and identity. I want to ask you a little bit about a kind of war-related book that you chose, Rona, which is I'm coming to the title of it. I'm sorry. The Jackal's Mistress.
I was going to say Civil War. Yes.
Yeah.
This is Chris Bajalian, and speaking of men writing in women's voices, he wrote The Midwives, which was a huge hit, and people were upset that it was a man writing that. But Jackal's Mistress is set during the Civil War, and it's a fascinating story about a Yankee soldier who is severely injured, loses a leg, and he gets taken in by a Confederate woman whose husband is missing and is hoping if something is wrong with him, somebody will take care of him. So she takes this man in, and she takes good care of him at the risk of her life and the lives of everyone who's living with her, a niece and some people, some Black freed slaves that are on her property. And she does that, and you keep thinking that the whole time, because of the title, that she's going to have an affair with him because it's the Jackal's Mistress. So that sort of compels you along till the end, and I won't tell you whether she does or she does not. But it raises those interesting questions like Angie talked about. This is a time of great divide in our country, and certainly the Civil War was a time of great divide, and where we find that humanity. And she found that humanity, and this is a human being who, needs help and needs taking care of, like she hopes someone is taking care of her husband. And he does a great job with historical fiction, Chris Bajalian.
You recommended some nonfiction books, Donna, that I'd like to get to. One by Craig Pittman, who is known to people who've lived in Florida for a time. He has done kind of serialized reporting on weird Florida and wild Florida and kind of all the strange. He was a former Tampa Bay Times reporter for a long, long time and a columnist. But he loves kind of embracing all weird things about Florida. Tell us about what you're recommending.
Absolutely. His newest is Welcome to Florida, True Tales from America's Most Interesting State. He was at Story and Song last Friday for a literary luncheon, and we loved hosting him for a second time. He's so delightful. He's so funny. He's so real. And so he tells about his friends who grab their heads every time they hear this really crazy story of somebody doing something incredibly foolish, and they think, oh my God, there's a Florida angle in there somewhere. Where is it? So Craig tells stories in his book, as he did with our readers on Friday. Some are factual. I mean, he tells real stories because of his reporting background. Mm-hmm. He opens us up to some of the things that happen along the state and continue, especially with development. Mm. So here we have this.
Because he did environmental reporting for years, too. He wasn't just a kind of whimsical writer. Yeah.
And he's very committed to that. It's clear that he's got the best of nature in Florida at heart. And yet we have story after story, incident after incident, where things come up to the local towns and municipalities. And guess what? Developers win most often. And so that sounds like a really depressing book, but he's got plenty of stories of how could a manatee actually become a person and have voting rights in a city, and just some things that are very endearing, because for as many developers that we have groups of citizens who are engaged and who fight for the best of Florida. So Craig Pittman's Welcome to Florida is a collection. So what's great about that, you can take it to the beach, you can read a section of it, put it down, come back to it, put it on the coffee table, and guests can pick it up. And Craig is definitely going to entertain you.
I want to take a call from Keith in Riverside. Good morning, Keith. Go ahead.
Good morning, and I'd like to recommend a book, a little bit of self-promotion. I wrote a book in 2024 called Black Officer, White Navy. It was a revision of a self-published memoir I did in 2017. If you want to understand why the diversity issues exist in the military, DEI initiatives, affirmative action, et cetera, that book will give you a tour of a black sailor's journey from 1975 Florida to Mayport, Florida, Jacksonville, Florida in 19 97 when I retired. It covers a lot of ground, and in keeping with the military theme, there's a lot of people in this area that served in the military that have no idea what family members or relatives might have gone through, and this really lays it out. I want to make a correction. The 6888, that was in World War II. The first black naval officer was commissioned in 1917. His name is Garrison Payne. I wrote an article about him. And the first Army officers were trained at Fort Des Moines, Iowa in 1917 as well. They just did a commemorative marker at Fort Des Moines. But if you want to know about what it's like to serve as a minority in the military, Black Officer White Navy is a great book. I've been trying to get my local library to pick it up, but so far I've been unsuccessful.
Keith,
all right, thank you.
Keith, what's your last name?
Yeah.
Just if people are looking it up.
Reuben Keith Green.
All right.
But if you just Google Black Officer White Navy, it'll pop right up.
Great.
And
Thanks.
Lieutenant Garrison Payne will give you some good info too.
Thanks so much for calling. Appreciate it.
I would definitely love to carry your book, Keith. And so my apologies. I thought I said World War II. Kind of wrangling a baby in here. So. But yeah, definitely would love to be interested in carrying his book and maybe even have an author's chat.
All right. Well, I guess you can reach out to Angie Nixon, Keith. Thanks for calling. We also have a call from Claire in Atlantic Beach. Good morning, Claire. Go ahead.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, we're terrific. Go ahead. You've got a book recommendation?
I do. It's called The Unexpected Escape of Uriah Heep. And first of all, I really wanted to call in because I just appreciate the show in general and talking about books in particular. We have a lot of grim stuff happening out there, no matter which side you're on. And I think it's lovely to have some escape into something that we can appreciate with less feeling of being fraught. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. Sure.
The Unexpected Escape of Uriah Heep by H.G. Perry. I'm in love with this book right now. It focuses on our two protagonists. One is a sort of an average good lawyer in New Zealand, and then there's his brother, who is an amazing genius, and his field of study is literature, especially the English Victorian literature. And it turns out that when certain people are reading very passionately, some of those characters come to life. And therein create some problems. We meet up with Sherlock Holmes. We have we have people from Dickens, especially, of course, Uriah Heep. David Copperfield makes an appearance. Some characters from Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, etc. And it turns out that there is some kind of force of evil in the world, and our two heroes and some of the fictional characters must join up to defeat the forces of darkness. But it's done so beautifully with a lot of delight, reverence, and snarkiness about the literary world, literary criticism, literary analysis, and then what would these people be like if they had freedom to act in the world?
Very fascinating, Claire. That sounds like a great recommendation. Thank you for your call and for sharing that. We also have a call from Karen in McClenny. Good morning, Karen. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'd like to recommend a series, Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, Osman. It's about a group of people in a retiree community who solve murders. And it's just a great book.
Yeah, I think, Karen, my mom's reading that right now, and I think a number of her friends have enjoyed it too. So is that a book that you've heard about as well? You were nodding, Rona.
Oh yeah, it's a bestseller.
Series?
So it's great to have a series. It's like buying a charm bracelet. You know what to get next, so you just wait for the next one to come out.
Right. One book that you recommended, Donna, was The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong.
Ocean Vuong is he's an interesting guy. I saw him in February at a conference in Denver of booksellers, and he had all 800 of us totally captivated by his gentle being. And so this is a book where, and his writing in general, will sensitize us to a different culture. So some European booksellers say Americans are such narrow readers. They always need everything tied up nicely at the end. And I always challenge our book clubs to pick books that are open-ended or sometimes just open us up to humanity. So Ocean Vuong is American with a Vietnamese background. He was born in Vietnam. His mother took him to the library after school and said, Ocean, go in there and read everything. And so you get this guy, whose mother doesn't really understand it's not possible to read everything, but he opens up this world in The Emperor of Gladness. And I think it's somewhat autobiographical because the main character is 19-year-old Hai. And at the beginning of the book, he's ready to jump from the bridge. His mother is, she does nails at the nail salon, and he's been living a lie. He's been telling her he's in med school, and he isn't. He's working at the home market in food prep. And so he gets talked down from that ledge from an elderly Garzina who is from Lithuania, and she's way up there, and she's suffering from dementia. And the short of the story is, in the middle of this, that Hai becomes Grazina's caretaker.
Oh, wow.
And it's about that relationship. We have immigration from two very different generations. And it's about humanity, it's about differences, it's about belonging, and it's about friendship.
Tricia, I want to ask you not so much about a book, but I mean, while it's great to find a great read, really one of the precious things is sort of finding the time and space to read a book sometimes with all of our distractions and all of our lives. I think right now you're at a kind of an ideal place to discuss that, but how do you find and prioritize that so that you have time in your life to devote, to this thing that you love so much?
Well, I want to mention that I'm in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is where Ocean Vuong lives. And I keep driving past his house and going to neighborhood coffee shops hoping to run into him, but no luck so far. I certainly adored his first book, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and that was on my list too. I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited to. I think you have to prioritize reading in the way that you prioritize self-care. I mean, people, especially my students, say to me all the time, I don't have time to read. Well, you got to make time to read. Even if you get up 15 minutes early or say 15 minutes before bed, it gets you into the habit of reading. And I think once you get into the habit, you realize how much it adds to your life. I mean, it's how much more you think, how much more thoughtful you can be, how much more perspective you have on life. I mean, we were talking about people writing about things that they are perhaps not immediately identified with, like the Jeanine Cummins book. But, she did her research on that. She knew what she was talking about when she was writing that stuff. And through fiction, I mean, certainly through nonfiction as well, but through fiction, you can learn so much about life and about current events. If current events bores you, read fiction because you can learn just as much from it as you can by sometimes watching the news. But I think prioritizing reading is something that hopefully is coming back. I think during COVID, perhaps we all did a lot more reading than we had in the past. But once you establish it as a habit in your life, you won't want to give it up because it adds so much to it.
Well, Tricia Booker is the author of The Place of Peace and Crickets, which is an amazing book. If you've not read it, it's definitely worth a read this summer.
Thank you.
Tricia Booker, Rona Brinlee of the BookMark, Angie Nixon of Cafe Resistance, Donna Kaufman of Story and Song in Fernandina Beach. So happy to have this conversation with you. Thanks for sharing your best summer reads.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hope everybody finds the perfect read.
All right.
For sure. We would love for folks to come out and celebrate with us. Our first year anniversary on Saturday.
Oh,
Yay.
congratulations.
That's wonderful.
Terrific. What time is that celebration?
It's from 10 to 6 p.m. on Saturday at Cafe Resistance.
All right.
Located on Soutel Drive.
Go have a smoothie and get a book. All right.
Yay.
Thanks so much.